in your closed value shape assignment, you should have both your part 1 of 7 values and your part 2 of 5 values completed. And so the next step that you're going to have to take is to format them correctly on your artboard. Now, if you look at the instructions, it said that it shouldn't exceed 1.5 inches on its side closest to the edge of the artboard. And so what that means is whatever side of this image that is going to be closest to the edge of the artboard, which in this case is going to be the top, has to not exceed that 1.5 inches. And the other thing we want to make sure of is that we have these centered and laid out consistently. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to turn on our rulers at the top and sides of our screen. And there are two ways to do this. You can go to View, and you will see an option that says Rulers, and you can go to Show. But more easily is if you notice the keyboard shortcut is Command R. So I'm just going to hit that on my keyboard, and now I will have these rulers show up. And then what I can do, and there's two ways to do this. I can go to the top of my screen, and you'll notice as I zoom in, right, this artboard is staying justified to that 0. So if I go to the top of my screen, I can click and drag, and you'll see I get this little gray kind of crosshatch dot. And I can drag it all the way down to that 1.5 mark and let it go. And I can do the same thing on that horizontal guide by clicking and dragging until I get it at that 1.5 mark. So this is a really easy way to do this. The downside of using guides in this way is they extend off the screen. So if you have multiple artboards that you're working with, it can be a little bit confusing to have these lines extending off the screen. So another thing that we can do if we want to contain our guides just to the artboard is if I actually click on my artboard tool right here, and once that artboard tool is selected, now if I go to the top of my screen, and I'm going to zoom in again just so it's a little easier to see. Now if I go to the top and click and drag, you'll notice I'm still going to get that little crosshatch line, but now it's going to be restricted just to the artboard. And there isn't a right or wrong way. It's kind of preference as to whether or not you want them extending off the grid, and it will depend on what kind of projects you're working on. And I'm going to find another one for my midpoint. I'm going to move that just because it's getting a little bit in the way. And what's nice is you should have these snap guides. And so as I drag these, you'll notice that they snap right as they meet that middle line. I'm going to do the bottom one, clicking and dragging again. And so now that I have these guides set up, I can use them as a framework to scale my images accordingly. So I'm going to go back to my regular direct selection tool, or my regular selection tool, and I'm going to take my images and I'm going to bring them over into my artboard and place them accordingly. The next thing I'm going to have to do is address my value scales. And you'll notice I've actually grouped these so that way I don't have to worry about grabbing them one at a time. And so I'm going to do my best to center these. You'll notice that they're kind of snapping in different spots. It's a little bit inconsistent. And that's okay, because one of the easy things we can do is we can actually just use that align tool to lock these all so that they're on center. And so the easiest way to do that is now to click and select those objects, or I can hit shift and cherry pick each one because I don't really want to lock it to that guide. And then I can go over to my align panel and I can hit this one right here, align on center, which will align them all so that they're consistently lined up. And you'll notice in this case, it actually aligned them right to the middle of the artboard, which is very convenient. But I can also now move them to the left or the right if I need to adjust. The other thing that you can do when you're working with these tools is you'll notice right now if I highlight all of these, this is kind of annoying. If I go to move them, it's actually going to take my guides with me, and I don't always want that to happen. So if I don't want to have my guides continually move around or to be an object that's going to get in the way, what I can do is if I go over to View, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says Guides. And in there, one of the nice options that I have is I can lock the guides. And now if I click this, now if I click on my objects and move them, I don't have to worry about accidentally selecting those guides and having them move around on me. And that is a really easy way to start to center and measure out your artboard to make sure that things align consistently and are even. You will find that these are really helpful when you're doing other sorts of like layouts or templates. So if you have a system or a structure that you're working with, setting up these guides will be really helpful in future assignments.